This morning I have a guest to be able to make sense of most of the stories that are making sense in the media today. I will come from this cash bailout, 53 billion that has been set aside for 530,000 people. What does that mean for you? But also the changes, the reshuffle in the army, what does that mean? And we also look at the messenger and the message. General Tumwine said transition is one of the messages he'll be spending time discussing with the president. That and more is our discussion, but this morning I'm joined by General MUGISHA Muntu, also the founder of Alliance for National Transformation. General, good morning. I think it's still morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine.
It's good. You look healthy. You look well.
By God's grace.
We thank God that you're well. One of the things that inspires me about you is your reverence for God in everything you do. How do you keep it, especially in this political season?
Well, we live, we survive, we do all the things we do just because of God's grace. I mean, without God, how can you survive anything? You know? and
I want to testify, you know, the first time we met, you and I, was at a coffee shop somewhere on Entebbe Road, a corner there.
Yes.
And one of the things that blessed me about you was you got to pray for the tea you were taking, and I was taking water that day. I don't think you even remember, but yeah, very profound things. And also when we also met,
we have to be thankful for everything.
And everything for you is reverence to God. But let's dig into the stories. General Tumwine comes out and says one of the messages he's going to be speaking to the president as an advisor is the transition. What is wrong with this? What is your reading, especially with this transition? And what is General Tumwine talking about?
It's a legitimate message. And it's also a message which is relevant to our times.
Yes.
And until we reach a point when we can have a smooth transition, that message remains relevant. Why so? Because in 59 years, we've never had any smooth transition. We've never seen a government handing over to another peacefully. Therefore, that calls upon us to try to see how to manage the next transition, because inevitably it's coming. If we are unable to work deliberately, consciously for a smooth transition, having failed in the last 59 years to do so, because we have had changes of government twice through coups, twice through major wars, and we have got so many internal conflicts, all of them revolving around fighting over power. That's our history. So if we don't work consciously towards having a smooth transition, basically it would mean that we are a people who are either inherently inept or we are blind to the realities of our situation. Because it can't be by accident that for 59 years that there has never been a transition. It means that there has been something that is a problem in management of power, and also how to manage it, handing power from one group to another. So we must pay attention to that. And therefore, whatever anybody may think about the messenger, whatever interpretation people may try to make about General Tumwine, I really don't want even being engaged in trying to decipher what triggered him to give the message at the point when he did it. And the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is all of us keep focusing on that message so it doesn't get lost. Because we can also get so focused on trying to interpret why General Tumwine said what he said at the point at which he said it, and lose sight of the message itself. Yes.
And General, that's where I want to go, because the messenger is saying something that I would like you to be able to point the direction of what Ugandans need to be paying attention to. The message is the main point.
Yes, absolutely. We don't want to as far as I'm concerned, yes.
The message and get the message and try to crucify him. Let's get to the message. What is General Tumwine seeing, especially with the seeming of the evening of the NRM? What is he seeing that we're not seeing, and what should the public be paying attention to?
I really don't think that General Tumwine is seeing anything new. Those of us who are in the opposition have seen this, we have talked about it. even if we talked about it, as we continue talking about it, I don't think it would make the same news as it has made when General Tumwine said it. Two, I don't think that even those in the regime, that what General Tumwine said is new. The only new thing is that he said it. All those senior, officials on the political arm, in the movement, in government, even those in the security services, I believe, literally all of them, I think about the same thing. But they are not able to say it because of the environment. And that's what we need to deal with. Why should we have an environment in this country where we know that there is a problem in the managing of transitions that we have lived through in the last 15 years, that we must pay attention to it and ensure that we don't repeat the same scenarios as we've gone through? That's legitimate. That is the only responsible way, considering that we are 45 million people. So anybody who is in government, anybody who is in the movement, those who know that at some point there will be a transition, I don't want to listen to those who say there is a constitution. Even in 71 we had a constitution. Even in 80 there was a constitution. Even in 85 there was a constitution. 86 there was a constitution. So why have we gone through those conflicts? There were constitutions. So let people exercise responsibility. Let's engage in discussing this question.
Yes.
More so those who are in the regime, because that's why they are not able to discuss it openly as we do internally. So they must work in a conscious way, in a deliberate way, to ensure that they deal with that question. In whatever way they deal with it, they must first be aware of it. They must be conscious of it and know that that situation is not going to deal with itself. Because there are a clique within the regime itself, which will go in its own areas, in seclusion, and discuss it. But you see, for them, the clique that discusses it in a way of advancing self-interest, their own group interest. But this is a national question. And that's why those who are in NRM, in parliament, in all sectors of life, those who are in the religious circles, cultural circles, wherever they are, this is a legitimate question. It affects all of us, 45 million people. As we have noticed in the past, when power is mismanaged, everybody pays the price. It is not limited or restricted to the few who are in power. It just affects everybody in the country. So that question must remain alive. We must keep on propagating it. We must keep on discussing it until it becomes normal, even for those in power, to discuss it.
And I'm glad you're discussing it, and I'm glad you're saying it's something relevant that we need to keep drumming, so that it becomes reality.
Yep.
But is transition in this country, you have spoken of 59 years of this country.
Since independence.
And too many coups that have happened, 71, 79.
Yes.
But also, is transition a reality or it's ideal? And how can it happen in Uganda?
First, it is inevitable. When you look at the situation that we're in, everybody knows that at some point, General Museveni will cease to be in power, another team will get into power. So managing that is the most critical thing now, in this period.
How do you get the numbers to be able to do this?
We have to keep talking. At least those of us in the opposition will keep talking about this. My hope is that it will infiltrate within the ranks of the movement people. They know about it, they are conscious of it, but they are not able to discuss it openly. That's the kind of environment that we need to influence through all means, so that they start discussing it internally. I don't mind they don't have to come on the press and talk about it. I mean, like those in the army, in police, in intelligence services can't come out in the open and discuss political questions of this nature. But there needs to be an environment in which, behind their own closed doors, that they are able to deal with this question. We simply cannot let a clique of people be the only ones who are free to discuss it when it affects 45 million people.
So, General, you have spoken about continuously discussing it.
Yes.
Continuously making sure it's out there for us to be able to prepare it.
Yes.
But how else can we get in this direction? Can the Constitution help? Members of Parliament, how do we do this, especially 45 million Ugandans, to see a transition with no bloodshed?
Well, those of us in the opposition must keep organizing. But questions of this nature, once they become propagated and the message keeps on being drummed up, so that they're discussed in all walks of life, those who are in all circles or areas of endeavor, that they keep discussing it. Eventually, those who would want to use manipulation, as they always do, who use deception, because the moment it remains in the hands of a clique of people who keep on manipulating the public mind, create fear, so that everybody doesn't discuss it, that the ones who go, maybe there are 2 or 3 or 4, whatever number they are, they discuss it and they keep on manipulating the situation as it evolves, hoping that it will evolve in their favor. Once you demystify the question and it is discussed broadly so that there is no more fear, then it is to the advantage of the forces that would want to drive change, but in a smooth, stable way. So the more people fear to discuss it, the more it plays to the advantage of the clique that would want to take advantage of this. It's not here only in Uganda. We have seen it happen in quite a number of countries where you find small cliques within the power structures start trying to do things to put off surprises. It would be irresponsible, all of us, if we do not keep on promoting this message and drum it up to a point where everybody is aware of it, is conscious of it, and is working towards having a smooth transition.
And we are having an exclusive interview with General Muntu here, and we're discussing everything current affairs, especially the transition that was suggested by General Tumwine there. But we want to be able to switch a bit. General, 175,000 vaccines brought into the country. Vaccination started yesterday. And then 53 billion shillings has been set aside as cash bailout for 530,000 Ugandans. They say vulnerable Ugandans, vulnerable poor, and all these things. What is your thought especially on this cash bailout, and how can we be able to help our fellow Ugandans who, a border rider, a taxi operator that gets money just to feed his family for a day, how can we help them in this lockdown, in your view?
If it is managed well, and it reaches the intended vulnerable groups, it would be good. The only observation I've made is that it seems the regime didn't take advantage of the RAR that we got between the first wave and the second wave. One would have expected that in the time that we bought as a country, after the first wave, because it took maybe 10 months plus, that they would have spent time planning in how to deal with the next wave.
Yes.
When you look at the way they are managing that, I get an impression that they are just a knee-jerk reaction. Suddenly they find there's a second wave, and then they are looking at the options which they have, which they should have done earlier, because it won't be the first time. Kenya used the same method. As food was being distributed here, Kenya reached out to the recipients, the vulnerable groups, and gave money through mobile money. What the team needed to have done, the regime would have got a team to study how that could be effected, which means they would have worked out lists of vulnerable people, got their mobile numbers, seen those who are covered by mobile coverage, those who don't have mobile numbers, how they would deal with that. But when they announced, and I think maybe the first time I saw it being announced was by the incoming PM, it looks as if that's what sparked off the planning process, at least when you see. Because we are now 11 days, and here they are still planning to know how many people, who are the target groups, and how money will get to them. I see all these questions from the senior leaders, all of them in the press. If they had taken advantage of the 10 plus month to plan, the moment they announced, they would have rolled out. So let's wait and see. Definitely the last time when they distributed food, it was mismanaged. It was a mess. The one hopes that this time round, when they're using mobile money, that it won't be as messy as it was last time.
And I'm glad you're talking about mobile money because the statistics show there are about 30 million Ugandans on mobile money, but about 18 million are registered, but they do not actively use it. About only 10 million are actively using mobile money there. But my question to you is, everyone is asking what government is going to do. But I want to put it to you, what is the Alliance for National Transformation going to do for its supporters, especially the ones that need a hand up or a handout in this season?
Well, of course, as a party, we don't have resources. Government is using our taxpayers' money. So we expect they are going to handle every vulnerable person, regardless of background, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnic group, regardless of religion. And therefore, it will be coverage for all the vulnerable. For us as a party, I don't think there's any party which has the capacity to intervene in that regard of giving money. Because you can imagine if they are talking about distributing, is it 53 billion? 53 billion, even, I mean, there's no party which would even raise, even the movement, if it wasn't, like during campaigns, if it wasn't using the taxpayers' money, there's no way it would raise that kind of money.
And looking at the way COVID is, because one of the suggestions that watching international media and watching what is happening, there's also a Delta virus, a new variant that they're talking about, especially in the European countries. How would we prepare for that one? Because tendencies seem like there will be a third wave. And how would you suggest government, or how do we prepare as the population for this wave? I
really hope that the government wakes up, because the second wave has come. We hope that the third wave won't come. Or if it comes, that they should have had adequate preparations. Preparation is a very critical factor. You know, because if they had done adequate preparations in the 10 months when there was a RAR, we wouldn't be having the problems that we face, where lack of personal protective equipment for health workers. Just last night, I watched a program on one of the TVs where about 14 doctors have died, 12 have died from COVID. I saw in a region like Bunyoro, there was another report where about 100 health workers were infected by COVID. So you can imagine what must be happening elsewhere. Why? Just because of lack of PPEs. You can see the outcry for oxygen. Cylinders, lack of cylinders all over the country, literally. So what in 10 months they would have been able to have the cylinders, understand the cylinder costs about 2.5 million. Yes. They would have had the capacity to equip government hospitals with the plants to generate oxygen, or even worked with the private sector, because there are quite a number of private sector actors, so that there would be no lack of cylinders, there would be no lack of oxygen itself. And in all other areas, it's just lack of preparation, but also lack of focus. Because the biggest problem we have with this regime is most of the leaders, 90, possibly 80 some plus, 90 plus, are focusing on survival. It is like there's no tomorrow when you see their actions. Looting, there's no area where you don't see mismanagement of funds. They are operating from a mentality as if the world is about to end or something like that. So when you are hit by a crisis of this nature, you need discipline. Because if there was discipline in government, we would have been adequately prepared. So my hope is that they learn lessons. In the uproar that there is in all these areas where they were supposed to be prepared, and they want that when the third wave comes, if it comes, that will be much better prepared.
General, yes. Looking at a hospital like St. Mary's Lacho,
yes.
Over the last few weeks we have been celebrating them, and we also spoken about last week on Friday during the national prayers.
Yes.
It's a hospital that is charging 5,000 for seeing a doctor, 50,000 for admission, oxygen is free. They were very well prepared, 28,000 liters, and they have excess in case they go, it runs out of another 28,000 liters there. And they say if there is any charge that is over and above, the most they'll charge you is 715,000 shillings, yes, for all your treatment for COVID-19.
Yes.
It's exorbitant here in Kampala.
Yes.
Between 3 million and 10 million shillings. Why isn't government managing this situation well? Why is the private sector running away? And yet people like Lacho are doing well.
The faith-based medical facilities,
yes,
it seems to me, are still driven by a sense of service, a sense of values, amidst the difficulties that they must be facing. But the institutions, when it comes like to delivery of services in the health sector, are doing the best that they can in the circumstances. Now, the other private sector actors, I think, have fallen in the trap of those who are running the country. Because literally those who are running the country have elevated money to a level of worship. It has contaminated the minds of our people in the different sectors. Well, money has ceased to be looked at as a tool to enable services in whatever area. Even those who are in the private sector, okay, looking at profit, profit is a motive. But there is profit which is normal, which is legitimate. But there is abnormal profit, which can only be driven by greed. Like when you see in the private sector actors in the medical environment, definitely those owners of hospitals are just a bunch of, you can't in a crisis, more so in the health services sector. Health service sector is not an area where you should expect that people should go there for purposes of only profit. And well, that's where governments really need to be disciplined enough to ensure that the two sectors, health and education, that the monitoring mechanisms of the government and the enforcement measures to ensure that people who go in those areas, yes, they should be expected to run those facilities in a way of getting profit, otherwise they won't run them. But that they don't go there because they are motivated by profit. Those who go there motivated by only profit, they should be run out of such systems.
Why isn't government
those are critical areas. If people want money, those who want profit, they can go in manufacturing, they can go in agriculture, they can go in other service sectors, not in education, not in health.
And I get you with health and education being especially the foundations of how a nation gets a productive sector.
Absolutely.
Then, General, how would you help government, or how would you advise government? How would they regulate private sector to continue to serve and not be profit making?
They can make profit, yes. Otherwise how would they function?
Yes.
But the unfortunate thing is that if you don't have discipline in the central government itself, there is no way they are going to regulate. Because they lack the discipline. Yes, they lack the discipline. And therefore, all those who have strayed, like those who are in the medical services, those who are in education, have strayed because of the example they see at the top.
I want to thank you, General MUGISHA MUNTU, for spending time with us, especially to speak to the nation and speak hope in this season as we go on. But even as we have had a conversation with General Muntu, we'll be able to get him, even when we need him, to be able to speak more on what is happening in this nation with all the current affairs, and also create hope and faith in everything that is happening. He has said qualitative change. And after COVID-19, what next? Those are the questions we need to be able to ask ourselves, because the ban for COVID, as the Bible says, there is nothing new under the sun, and nothing lasts forever. Even as the pandemic comes to an end, please maintain the SOPs out there that are given to us by the Ministry of Health. But from us here at Spirit TV, God bless you and have a fabulous morning.